All right, so moving ahead, we're going to talk now about cellular out-of-band management, call home, OpenVPN, IPsec, how they're being used and how they're being used with centralized management. When these devices are in an isolated place, hooked up to a primary network, and you use them once in a while to gain access to a router or switch or make a config change, that's great. But when they have to go failover mode and they bring up the cellular radio, it's difficult to find them. We do support dynamic DNS. That may not be as reliable as some people require. So you either have a static IP address or you're going to have dynamic DNS to find the device, to reach out to it. The more common application lately is to have the devices call you from one location, and that's to either our centralized management software using an SSH connection or back to a headquarters using IPsec or OpenVPN or one of the VPN technologies. So we found that it really is easier to find them at one spot. I mean, people like to hunt things down, but it's if time is of the essence, it's easier to go to one place. It's not an Easter egg hunt. So what we're going to look at here is, we'll go back down to a downstream device. IPsec, OpenVPN, PPTP call home, these are all portions of the VPN area within our product. The call home is set up, which is simply providing a host name. We'll edit this one. For the target VCMS, in this case, it's a virtual central management system of ours. It can be an OpenSSH server, so if you want, you can use just a Linux server running OpenSSH.
I haven't seen that before, actually. But yeah, it would work, yeah.
It sure would.
Yeah.
So that's how you set this up on the downstream console server. Now what this looks like through our VCMS here, which I've hopped onto, I'll show you at the top. This is a VCMS, so it looks very similar with the logos. It's kind of hard to determine if you're at the VCMS or a downstream device because they look so alike. But on the left, you can tell some more of the Nagios options that are available that are tied into it and built in. And in this area, we're looking at devices that have called home and created the port forward. Down here, we can detect console servers that are calling home and admit them into the system. So when we bring them into the system, we're going to set up a key exchange, give each other their root passwords to set up the key exchange, and then they're locked into the system. And one of the things about Nagios that some people, just strictly point-and-click users, had problems with was stopping and starting and adding checks from the command line and restarting services. So when you build out users, network hosts, serial ports, auto-response checks, all the alerts, when you retrieve this device from the screen, it goes out and builds those checks automatically and puts them into the services category, puts them into the default settings for the different checks that are running in Nagios, which is a point-and-click way to get devices in here. They can also call home over IPsec and SSH if you want for extra added security. So when they call home, you can get in here and manage them. You can access them through a variety of different screens. The services screens, we put a link for our SDT connector software. You can tell these things are having critical problems. I can tell you the reason why, but you'd really be laughing. We had to change DNS downstairs on the way up here and the way in. Someone had taken over one of our hosts and launched denial of service attacks on somebody else who was really rather unhappy about it.
I can't imagine.
So what we're going to talk about next is,
you were saying about security earlier?
well, some brilliant person left a default as the password for VNC on a remote host. Not sure how that happened. You know,
Very usable.
that's a great time right during Tech Field Day. So we're going to talk a little bit about the VCMS now. With the Nagios, you get everything that you already get with Nagios. If you have custom stuff you want to add it in, it's very extensible, it's very flexible. You can add it in and simply build it out like you would normal Nagios. What we found to be the paradigm is how to get people to find hundreds and thousands of products and downstream devices easily, and a way to group them and filter them. So we've had customers that do have hundreds and thousands of our devices out there, and they want to find a way to be able to manage it from one single screen. So getting that and going through host lists is getting tiring. And they're like, I want to be able to drill down by department. You know, if this is in Utah, I want to be able to tag it for Utah and find it in Utah. If it's in Australia, it's something like that. So being able to put naming and identifiers on it was something that was very important. And I'm going to let Toby talk a little bit more about this. Because
So yeah, as Jared said, it basically was a request from customers that they needed some way to group these Opengear devices. And so the scheme we came up with, rather than just creating arbitrary groups, we decided to put together an attribute and value-based system that you could do searches upon and do smart groups with. So when you add a device to CMS, it'll go through and then retrieve certain attributes about that device, such as the model, its name, and its version, which then become attributes that get stored on the CMS, which you can then use to create groups or searches around. You can also create arbitrary valued attributes. So for example here, this guy here, you can see the top 3 attributes. On the left, you've got attribute and a value. So the top 3 attributes there are system generated and can't be changed, whereas the bottom one, location, was generated by me earlier, just as an example of one that you might want to create as an administrator. So as a first pass, what this does is create information essentially out of band about your console servers that you can then use to quickly take a look and see what you've got there. So on the left-hand side here, we've got a list of each of these attributes and all the possible values that we've seen. And clicking on that just shows a subset of the devices that have that particular value. And so what we're hoping is that this will provide a quick way for users to quickly drill down and take a look at their installed base and see what devices they have and get to them quickly. Of course, if you want a more complicated setup, one that can't be achieved just with like a single attribute and value pair, you can actually create a more complicated search which combines several different operators together. For example, you could do something like model begins with IM, location is not set, and version begins with, does not begin with. If I could actually click on it, there we go. And that creates a quick search of the devices that match those parameters. And you can save that as a group if you want to. And then that will then persist as a group that you can use to access your devices quickly. So before we added this feature, if you go to this page, what you would just see would be a flat list of all your devices. And if you had 1,000 units, that was pretty much unusable. Or you'd end up doing Control F all the time. So we're hoping that this sort of feature here will allow us to quickly drill down and see what you're looking at a lot faster, as well as giving you a bird's eye view of what your install is. So from this page here, this is our Access Managed Console Service page. And so from here, you're able to do things like browsing directly to a managed console, proxied via the CMS. You can also bring up web terminal ports, like we saw earlier, again, proxied via the CMS for each of the console ports attached to that device. Or you can kick off that client application, SCT connector.
Now, one of the things that was also built into this was a single sign-on.
Yeah.
For the proxy and for the different devices, so you didn't have to re-authenticate
That's
again.
right.
So you get to go to one spot, log in, grab your Cisco switch, web term to it using the shell in a box.
Yep.
Makes it a lot easier. So one single point to go to is what our customers requested. I mean, it's great that we have thousands of these, but if I have to search around and find them, it's killing time. So what this did is it helps reduce the labor involved in finding devices and those things that are attached to them.
Along that same vein, we've also added this Access Managed Devices page. So just like before with console servers, where we could add attributes to particular console servers, here you can add attributes to the managed devices that you've configured behind those devices. And then you can create intelligent searches based on that information if you need to. So examples here of some of the information that we pull across about a managed device. what connection it has, what connection types it has, and its name and location. And so from there, you can do the same sort of thing and create those same sort of smart groups if you need to get through to your devices. Yeah.
So in part of this segment, we were going to talk about the cellular out-of-band management and the ease of use and how that also enables security risks, costs, and things like that. We are FIPS 140-2. You can lock down all ports. You can isolate trusted networks, trusted subnets. So only the right devices and right subnets have access to that over the cellular band network, which really limits the chance of a security problem. If someone was sitting under a cell tower trying to snoop or sniff, they would have to be sitting under a cell tower to do that. But that's a situation that we wouldn't imagine would be feasible to then crack IPv6. What key we go up to 2046?
Off the top of my
Wouldn't it
head.
take longer than the cycle of a sun to crack or something?
Yeah. Something ridiculous.
Given the security involved with that, the risks are limited. And what we found is that when we first set off on the cellular out-of-band portion of our product was about 2 years ago. And data rates were $50 a month per site, per plan, per device. That was pretty high. So you would need to have a real compliance for business uptime to justify that. Now, $50 a month is cheaper than flying out there once a month or driving out there or hiring a third-party technician. But the price has dropped drastically with the adoption of what they call M2M data plans. The M2M data plans, some of the street pricing right now is $5 per remote site, so per drop or per SIM card, for 1 meg plans. And 1 meg doesn't get you a whole lot. But if you have 50 sites, it's a shared pool of data. You have 50 meg. And in a month, $5 is cheaper than a landline. As well, you have all that data pooled up, so you get to be able to share it amongst them. The M2M data plans also do a VLAN slice. It's a private VLAN slice. They normally don't allow you back out in the network with everyone else. They give you your own cloud-based IPsec access to your own out-of-band management network or M2M network. Some of the pricing that we've seen recently has been as low as 67 cents per remote site. And that was 300 units in northwest the US on Verizon, which is extremely cheap. And that's 1 meg data plan. So it depends on the buying power of the customer and their relationship with the carrier, because these are low data products that aren't always on. They're triggered on only at certain emergency times. So it's not going to be filling up their network. And to them, it's not a high cost. So the return on investment is nearly immediate when you have products like the ones that are on the desk that start off at MSRP of $675. And if you have 200 sites and your data plan is only 70 cents per site, it turns into a really feasible out-of-band solution for continuity. And if people have Sarbanes-Oxley or HIPAA standards or some other compliance they need to meet for continuity, it becomes really, really accessible, easy, and secure. So let's see here. Cellular out-of-band management. The core component of that is the centralized management software. So these devices can be found at one location. I think that is one of the reasons we built it, was as a call home gateway. So these devices have a place to call home to, outside of relying on which VPN concentrator are we going to call home to and things like that. We made it a lot more simplified and easy and accessible to people who need to set up this type of solution.
So so you talk about the mobile data plans and basically being able to set up effectively an MPLS VPN service throughout there. Is the VCMS appliance actually also have a packet data or wireless connection in the back end that you would then plug into the network and you would click in and proxy through the mobile connections to those remote devices?
You could if you wanted to, yeah. Yeah, you definitely could. You could use your primary core network. I mean, in theory, the VCMS is a hosted appliance in a high uptime environment with multi-homed and VPN access, say, to the M2M data plans.
But if you want to get to that remote, normally through the remote side, but in the case that remote side actually went down, you get into it over the mobile data. Or actually,
yeah. So yes, the devices call home over the cellular connection. They restore that connection over the cellular side. And they do show up in here as in failover mode. So you can tell if the device is in failover mode. So you get alerted it's in failover mode, and you can click on it and manage it remediate the problems and shut it down if you want, or leave the data plan up and running. So let's see here. Any other questions about the cellular data plans and how that ties in? So we set off on this because customers requested it that, hey, I don't need a modem. I don't have a modem line anymore. My switch is voice over IP that I need to manage. How am I going to get a single line out of the voice over IP switch that's troubled and try to manage itself? And so this is where the cellular adoption came in, thanks to voice over IP and having to keep uptime at remote sites.
I was looking at your website. You guys support a few different Sierra Wireless USB modems as well.
Mm-hmm.
We do the external modems that we support, the Sierra Wireless 598, Compass 8, 808,
or something like
and
that.
right now we have some preliminary support for Pantech 290s.
Is that the LTE?
The LTE,
Okay.
yeah, we're working on that. So we're moving into the LTE is where, obviously we want to be. Finding the best way to go about that with the carriers has been tricky. And we came from the security space, the console server space. We weren't BlackBerry or Apple, and having to adjust to the demands and the changing market of the carriers has been a learning experience. So certifying products and product families, and then antennas, and then internal components, and then going through private labs and things like that. And by the time you're done testing a 4G LTE product, someone could be coming out with a 5G. So finding a way to stay in front of that and stay on top of it, make sure you do it right, is something that we've learned. Now, in most cases, because they're designed for management, these boxes don't require high bandwidth or LTE. But in the case of Verizon, LTE signals have been stronger in some areas than CDMA. So it's something that, even though you're not using the speed, the way that they're changing their tower setup really demands that carriers and people that are playing in this market adopt the LTE technology.
So I also noticed on your website that you have IP KVM products. You don't have any of these type of devices that have IP KVM built into them?
No, you would have to put that behind one of these products,
Okay.
which there's dual LAN on it, which you could definitely do. Make it easy, set it up as a network host, and then give people access to it. You definitely could, yeah. And that's something, if you had an isolated server or something somewhere that you needed, to parachute in access and get to it either behind a commodity firewall without having to open up ports. And that's one of the things, these products do in-band or out-of-band. If you do have clients that are doing imaging processing at a hospital and they lease an office or a doctor's office and you're a managed service provider and you're going to try to give uptime to different stuff, having these devices call home to you eliminates the need of a work order to punch a hole through a hospital firewall or a mall.
3 months later.
Yeah, work order. So there's and given that these devices are finding themselves in different areas, after we outfitted them with the cellular components, it's opened up our market to a vast place that we never thought existed before. Did anyone have any questions about this stuff before we move on?
Just one quick question.
Yep.
Do the mobile-to-mobile plans come with fixed IPs from the major?
It depends on the plan you get. And there's some people, depending on the buying power of your company, you can demand static IPs. AT&T will tell you that for MSRP, for $3 more per month, they'll give them to you.
I'm just thinking about, you've got an outbound IPsec VPN. You really do, unless you're going DMVPN, you really do need to know the source IP.
If you're doing
at the head end, if you're doing an IPsec VPN, or is that the deployment scenario?
Not pre-shared keys. You do public keys. You got left and right.
You can
right?
use dynamic IPs with IPsec. Yeah. It can,
Okay.
It's a pain in the ass, but yeah.
Aggressive mode, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, aggressive mode.
Yep.
The pre-shared keys are not recommended, as far as I know, but
They're easy. Yeah. Yeah.
They recommend it if you want it to work pretty quick.